So first of all, Ms. Afia, welcome. I wanted to share very quickly that we are live streaming this on YouTube. I hope that's okay with you.
That's perfectly okay with me. It's just
Awesome. Awesome. So welcome to the Do Day that we have planned out. It's all about climate change, environmental impact. We have partnered with the Do School in Berlin to do this activity, and we're all spread out across the world planning this activity with our partners. So thank
I'm
you so
really
much.
excited to know what this is all going to entail and the kind of impact that you're going to have. So I look forward to it.
So I'm going to begin first of all by just sharing how absolutely like a huge fan I've been of your work as a journalist, as someone who started in an area which a lot of women did not even know exists, which is cricket journalism. You've been part of. I'll quickly do an intro. There was a huge intro that I could do, but I'm going to just pick some important things that I found. So, Ms. Afia Salam is a Pakistani journalist and a media development specialist by profession. She is known by being the first female cricket journalist in Pakistan. She has also remained a member of Pakistan's first batch of air traffic controllers and a member of the Coalition for Women in Journalism. So, with that intro, I wanted to kick off our discussion and start off with your story. How did you become so active in the environmental space? What was the love for nature or the climate? What really triggered this, I would say, direction for you?
I don't know if we can call it a trigger. So I guess it was it was like coming full circle sort of in my life. Many people are usually surprised when I tell them that my academic background is not journalism. My career has been. I did my master's in geography. So geography, and I then, moved into different fields of journalism. I did, of course, as you mentioned, cricket journalism and other fields.
Advertising, from what I remember.
Well, yes, advertising. I had about a 15-year stint in advertising as well.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I think I was in journalism. I was working for Pakistan's first television channel in English. And I got text from a friend that IUCN, which is actually the world's largest, collective of environmental organizations. So the Pakistan office was looking for a communications person, somebody to head their communications department. And she told me, why don't you go there? I said, but I'm very happy where I am. And, I think I found my niche because I was allowed a lot of freedom to, to bring up topics which are close. I felt, that the media should be focusing on. We had development issues and women's issues and environment and whatever. But she said, where's the harm? Just go and check it out. And when I got there, went through the interviews and everything, and I felt, here is something that I can have a specialized impact on. My academic background supports it. And actually, that thing was brought into focus by a friend of mine. And ironically, today is her birthday. She passed away a few years ago. And I always miss her whenever I'm sort of narrating the story of how I got into environment. Because she phoned me up and I told my friend circle that I'm joining IUCN in communications. And she said, after 30 years, you're going to do something that you studied. Really, it was really that long a journey that I was away from the field that I studied in. And this actually made it easier for me because when, those, the terms, the scientific terms, the geographical terms, climate change, all these things, when they were brought in front of me as a communications person, because I had to obviously now talk about these things, talk about the different programs the organization was running and, produce the communication products. So I would get it, because I had that academic background. So I felt, this was like a good mix. And then I just got deeper and deeper into it because I felt that this is something not enough is being spoken about in the media, in the field that I've come from. So I sort of wanted to become, the person who could advocate these issues with on the strength of the information that was at my disposal while being in the field and communicating with organizations, interacting with organizations who worked on the ground in the field of climate change and environment, and also being a journalist. So, as a journalist trainer, like you mentioned, a media development specialist. So I would be giving trainings to journalists on how to report on climate change, how to cover environmental issues. So I felt, that was a good mix, for personal good mix for me. And I got more and more invested into this field. And here I am.
Amazing. So I generally, when I talk about the environment or climate change, it's in the direction of a little bit of a pessimistic topic for me. Pakistan is likely to be hit really badly by climate change, and I know that because the work that we do is focused on women and girls, I wanted to kind of dig deeper into that. How do all of these changes that are happening to our environment, the carbon footprint, how does this directly impact women and girls? And especially when we think about from the rural context, but also from the urban context. So
Yeah.
I'd love to explore that question with you.
Okay, so I'm so happy that you're bringing this up, in the forefront, because yes, Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries. The latest index puts us at number 5 in the world. That is going to be impacted. So it's not even going to be impacted. It's not something that is going to happen in the future. We already are being impacted, and I mean it's a proven thing. We've got several case studies. We've got impacts. We can see the communities that are being impacted, etc. But when we look at those vulnerabilities, when you put on a gender lens, so you will see that the women and children and disabled and the marginalized communities that have already been mapped out as more marginalized, amongst others, are already being impacted more. So yes, a community in a given situation may be hit by flood. All of it is hit by flood. But within that very community, the women are impacted more. Because for one thing, they're displaced, their access to health services is compromised, their food and nutrition is compromised more than the healthier men of the same displaced and damaged community. So you have to actually put that gender lens on and see those sub vulnerabilities come to the fore. And it is not just rural. Yes, we do feel that our rural areas may be more, there's a lot more poverty, but there is a lot of poverty in our urban centers. If you look at Karachi, it's a mega metropolis, but 60% of Karachi lives in informal settlements, and the slums are beyond, other than those informal settlements. So there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of marginalization of services, utility, etc., which they don't access, either because of poverty or because they are supposed to be in the informal settlements, so the services structure doesn't reach them. And there you will find women are much more marginalized. There's also that gender burden that they bear, where some tasks are specifically given to them, and it has nothing to do with their natural makeup, because people have difficulty in understanding the difference between the sex and gender issue and gender roles that our society defines, which have nothing to do with the natural role of a woman being a reproductive being. And that is the only difference she has from a male. So she will be bearing the burden of carrying water, going in search of water, carrying water, carrying fuel wood, taking care of the livestock, plus taking care of all the household responsibilities, in which she barely ever. So I'm not going to talk about the exceptions. Yes, there are exceptions. Yes, there are supportive men, and they are across the board and across the social strata. I'm talking of generalities. And generally, you do not see women's burden being shared. Also, the woman's acknowledgement is not there of the burden that she bears. So she will be working in the fields. She will be working as a domestic labor. She will be working as home-based worker. And it's only now, after a lot of intervention by civil society organizations and labor organizations, etc., who have been putting documenting these things and putting them out, that some kind of legislative interventions are being done to recognize. Otherwise, your statistics do not reflect the amount of work that women do, the productive work, their share in the economy of the country. So that blindness keeps them away from having from benefiting from their labor. And that is a huge thing. That is something we really need to keep chipping away at, because they bear a special burden. I'll give you just two quick examples. Uh, Across the country, there are women, and it has been said that over 60% of women are employed, don't miss the word employed, in the agriculture sector of Pakistan. Mm-hmm. The statistics don't reflect it. Your books don't reflect it. But it is a fact that you drive across either the national highway or, well, even on the motorway, and you will see a lot of women working in the farms. Yeah. I'll give you the example of just two sectors within the agriculture. Cotton picking is generally done by women because their hands are, they're considered to be more easy, more amenable to be able to pick up the cotton. There's a lot of pesticide that is used to save the cotton crops from the pest attacks. These women are exposed to that chemical, the pesticide, which leaches into them from their skins. And women, don't forget, are the reproductive beings. So we have to keep making people aware of the difference and their double vulnerability. That these chemicals that they are ingesting in different forms are actually harming their reproductive health. So this is a burden that they bear. The other field, which almost everybody across Pakistan is familiar with, is the role of women in planting the rice saplings. Mm-hmm. They are bending over in the highest of temperatures. Temperatures are over 40, 45. That is when rice is planted. And they are bending over. They are given these saplings because, again, their hands are more agile. And even children, by the way. This is another, excuse given for employing children into these things. So women and children are employed in these. So the physical strain of their bodies bending over for hours and hours in the heat is something that can be measured, that should be acknowledged, and that should be not just compensated adequately in monetary terms, but from health terms, there should be something for them, because they age very rapidly when they have to bear this burden. The women carrying water, going in search of water for miles, sometimes taking that trip many times a day, because they can carry probably just about that 12 liter. 12 liters sounds very easy, and it's sort of romanticized in documentaries and in still shots, a woman in that colorful attire going in search of water, carrying that water pitcher. There's nothing romantic about it. Please, I'm so sorry to say this. I want to sort of burst that bubble who bring that romance into it, because there's nothing romantic of going so far away and bearing that burden every time. You're sometimes carrying your child. There is an organization in Pakistan which documents women's stories and the way they are projected in the media. Its name is Aks. They did a whole radio series by the name of Pani Ki Kahani, in which their producers went across the country following the women who on the water trail. And women have actually given birth while going for water. They've cut the umbilical cord and carried the baby in whatever shape and form it survived is anybody's guess. So these are this is why when we say, and everybody says, gender, what do you mean gender? If somebody's poor, they're all poor. No, within the poor, there are these sub-vulnerabilities of women, which we need to have. Within the disaster struck, there are sub-vulnerabilities of women and children that we need to focus especially on, because then they actually become, they go outside the pale of any kind of relief or any kind of interventions that are done for their benefit. Brick kilns. You have women working in the brick kilns. They are working as roadside laborers, building roads. They are, beating down stones into gravel. The brick kilns, the fumes they inhale, they again, for their own health, their lungs, their eyes, and then again as a reproductive being. Just being a reproductive being, the role nature has given to them is actually being compromised by the gender roles that are burdened on them. Yeah. So these are the things I think we need to talk about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. This was really the things that you shared, these examples. I can't relate because some of these activities we're so privileged that many of us don't do and don't realize as well. And the thing that you said about how these disasters impact women and girls even more, I see it with the pandemic as well. The way that women had to take up additional roles, deal with family responsibilities, as well as work responsibilities, and the stress and anxiety of a pandemic upon us, I realized that the burden is far more.
And
Um,
where the burden of domestic violence, because they were now closeted with their abusers and other things. So just one sector which I do want to mention. I'm sorry I'm taking your time, but other than this agriculture sector, I've mentioned the disaster, and I mentioned the brick and workers. We've got a lot of we've got a 1,000 kilometer coast where there are fisher folk. Now, when the men go out for these voyages to get the fish, they are away for weeks, sometimes months. All the burden is on the women who stay back on the in their communities, and these are poor communities, and they take a lot of loans, for the boats, for boats repairs, for the stock they take with the men when they are going on these voyages. And if they are late in returning, either sometimes because of the weather or because they haven't have caught enough catch, to be able to be more profitable when they come back, it's the women who have to bear those loan sharks who go and bother them. They face a lot of threats, a lot of abuse, and they are bearing that burden, plus each and every responsibility of running the household and running the chores outside, which their men, when they are home, they probably would have taken up. So there are so many additional responsibilities the women are saddled with, which even an acknowledgement, would probably make them feel that's a mental kind of an emotional thing, which would probably make them, feel, okay, we are doing this. But at least somebody realizes it. But nobody realizes it, nobody talks about it. And then if you quantify it, they are not compensated fairly.
that
So
brings me to an important question. And since you've been in this field for long enough, could you share that is there enough research being done on seeing the link for Pakistan between the climate change and the environmental impact and its impact on gender? Do you think there's enough research being done, and is there enough discussion and debate on the topic?
so my knee-jerk answer would be a big no,
Mhm.
but that's not a blanket answer, right? Because Pakistan overall is a data deficient country. We do not have data. It's so frustrating to try. And then you are extrapolating on such minimal data that sometimes your findings may not actually be a true reflection. So there are these pockets where you study, you do a pilot, and then you extrapolate those results, which may be okay for one sector, but they may not be okay for another. But there are organizations which are doing sector specific research, like I mentioned, the labor research. There are labor organizations which have done that and then engaged with they have brought to light the gender pay gap, and they
Mhm.
were interacted with the legislators, and they have made especially in the province that I live in Sindh, there have been many legislation which not enough, but of course the steps are being taken where they recognize home-based workers and domestic workers as well as farm workers as to be documented, and their wages to the gap has to be narrowed. The one good thing in the context of climate change is that there are gender policies
Mhm.
that are being developed. They have been developed in other countries. And in Pakistan, recently, from the Green Climate Fund, IUCN and other organizations have gotten together to do a sector specific gender mapping, which is going to reflect in the climate change framework that because we've got the updated climate change policy that was rolled out just 3 days ago.
Mhm.
And obviously the implementation plan and everything that has to be now developed in tandem with it is going to be reflective of those gender gaps that have been highlighted, which have come along with this specific set of recommendations. So the 4 or 5 major sectors have been outlined. There has been a very robust stakeholder engagement. We've had over 100 people in each session, and they are all sector experts. We've mapped out sectors of disaster and water and coastal resources. And so there are 5-6 major sectors in which the interventions are being planned. But good thing is that they are going to be documented, and there's research to back those documents. So there's a start. Okay, if after 70 years we've started at least, talking about, but then also, this is a global trend now. We are not the only country, which shows that we are now following the trends where the other countries have seen that there have been these gaps which need to be assessed, which need to be redressed, because without taking into consideration half your population, well, we are a little bit less than half, 48 point some percent according to the latest census, which again is not a very, it's an indication of something not being right. But at least now things are being done. And they are being sort of, fast-tracked, that those misses should be there removed.
Yeah. I also wanted to add something from our experiences in rural Sindh. Shavana is actually based out of Sakkar and has had a relatively more experience than I've had. But we've seen women working in the fields, and we work primarily on reproductive health education. So most of the women are actually doing all their agriculture work or while they're on their period, and sometimes without access to products. So sometimes they're without any product or rags. So I just imagine just having to deal with those 7 days. On top of that, the sunlight, then it's extremely, it's hard work doing the work that they do. So that in itself is something that we deal with for at least 30 years of our life. And that is something that they have to do with all the other work that they're doing. And it's really something that's very, very difficult. I wanted to also flip this coin and talk about what are ways that us Pakistani women are contributing to climate change. What are some of the biggest ways that, Suha, who's here, and Shavana and myself, that we might be doing things that are contributing and not realize that. And maybe that they are also specific to gender. I wanted to explore that a little bit.
So I don't know if... Okay, that's a very interesting question. I would have to really think about it, whether the women are contributing, because how many women have a choice in doing what they do? So we have to see that as well. So it's not just cultural, it's not just the urban woman. Maybe, if you want to be very flippant about it and say, oh, these women who are very, very, fashion, they go after fashion, and the fast fashion is contributory to this, to climate change, and the water use, the way we abuse, rather, not use water, that is there. So is it just a woman's problem? It's something, if you, when I go, it's very eye-opening if you just start Googling the water footprint of whatever you do. And it's actually, it makes you stop in your tracks and rethink that, can I do without this? Sometimes individual actions are not very focused on, and they become subsumed, by the bigger problem. So I don't know. I mean, it's not just the women who go after fast fashion. It's the men also who use consumable items. They throw items, and if you say the use of plastic, etc. So I would actually like to think more about this before just giving you an answer that it's the women who are actually doing this more. I can't think of something that it is only women specific, and I would love to hear answers about this, but you put me on this track now. I'm going to look up those answers as well and assess whether it's only a woman specific.
You're absolutely right in terms of the choices that we have, like for sanitary products that we throw out. No matter how much we try and separate our menstrual waste.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Somehow your voice disappeared again.
Yeah, I was saying that even if we talk about menstrual waste, can you hear me?
Something just went wrong. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
So what happened? Okay, let me quickly sign in again. I don't know what happened.
The examples that Miss Afia shared was so alarming about, I didn't even think about the examples of the brick-ins and other aspects. They were really, really interesting.
So my apologies. I have no idea. I mean, I've always had this, suspicion of technology being out there to get you.
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying that the thing that you said about the choice to actually choose a sustainable lifestyle for women is often also hard because even if we try to separate our menstrual waste and we try to be just um, uh, think about where it goes, we still don't have any control over how it is disposed of at the end. So it ends up in landfills. We don't know what happens in those landfills. So I think there's a lot of the lack of awareness about the whole process of our waste being thrown out. I really don't know. I will now move on to my next question, which is, how do we become like climate warriors like yourself? Like, what are ways that we can equip ourselves with information, with research, to be able to take some actions and also to kind of bring awareness to other youth who could take action?
I think you already are doing what you are doing. That is a step towards being a climate activist. And yes, I think the state that we have put the world in, the word warrior also is very, very relevant, because you're up again. You keep bumping up against lack of knowledge and also resistance sometimes for the action that need to be taken. So yeah, it is a battle. It is a battle all the time. It's a battle to keep on making people aware of why they need to take some actions, why they need a lifestyle change, which is the most difficult thing. It's very easy to shift something when it is sort of physical, tangible, but the communication and advocacy battle is of intangibles, and it is a behavior change, and behavior change is a very slow process. So I guess, sometimes how you can trigger behavior change is being like a role model with small actions by, walking the talk. So people don't point a finger at you. Okay, well, your lifestyle is this and you're telling us to do this. So that also is one stepping stone. And then the other, of course, is what you are doing. You are bringing you're talking about the people who are not able to talk about it themselves, maybe also because of lack of awareness. The woman bending over, planting that sapling in the heat, she's not aware that there is another life possible for her. There is another way. So like you said that, would you hold that woman responsible for the rice being planted in those fields where, of course, she's ruining her skin standing ankle deep in the water where there may be parasites and things? She doesn't have a choice. But people who plan, they do have a choice to put in place the mechanism of the new way of planting rice where you don't have to flood the fields. So again, we can't put, like I said, she doesn't have a choice. She doesn't know what she's doing. Is not just ruining herself personally, it is ruining the soil, it is ruining our water, it is wasting our water, that we always keep crying hoarse about, okay, we are pani kam ho raha hai and we'll be going thirsty. Well, no, pani is being, wasted. If we do not waste the water that is being wasted in agriculture, it can be used in other places where we do not have enough water. So all these things. So I think the biggest thing is a matter of choice. If after given a choice, if after being provided an enabling environment, you still don't take the right action, then of course, you need to be called out and a finger can be pointed out to you. But right now, I don't really see them being very, having that kind of an agency where they say, stop, we're not doing it.
Got it.
So the agency has to be there.
Yeah. I wanted to think about any very creative initiatives, either in Pakistan or outside, or any climate journalists or any activists that you look up to, that you see are like, role models for you.
Oh, there have been so many. I mean, I'm walking on the path that, that was opened by so many others. Uh, Amongst journalists, late Sania Hussain is seen as the person who actually, started journalism in Pakistan, environmental journalism, actually, uh, when she created the Journalist Resource Center at IUCN and, had capacity building workshops and exposure tours, and she passed away just too soon. But since then, there has been a very vibrant cohort of climate journalists in Pakistan reporting in difficult areas, on difficult topics, on policy matters. So maybe not enough given the size of the country and given the number and the variety of the issues that need to be reported on. But I do have faith in the journalists who have taken this on as their specialized subject. I really wish they had more counterparts within the media houses. That is what is missing. If you do a media audit, you still do not see the issue of climate change and environment hogging the headlines, as to say, because despite being on the so high on the vulnerability scale, despite being so disaster prone, so unfortunately, the things that capture the imagination of the decision makers in the media houses who will allow these topics airtime and space is event driven.
Yeah.
A disaster has struck, so everybody and their aunt will be doing those stories, right? Or if some report has been launched by some high up, or some VIP has is promoting a certain initiative, so, and especially if it is from the government, so they'll all be doing that. There are only a few who will be diving deep into it with a critical eye. They will not only be doing the wawa or just carrying the press releases and tagging a little bit of an intro and a conclusive para and passing it on. They will be critiquing it. They will be asking questions that what if this happens and what is the downstream effect of this, etc., etc. So there are too few there are people who are willing to do this and people who have been doing it and people who have the capability to do it, but they need that space to air out these things, within the media. We don't have as many editors or assignment editors or desk editors who would assign such stories or who would accept such stories if those journalists would pitch them. That is my sort of a latest pet peeve, that I think we need to enable the gatekeepers. We need to sensitize the gatekeepers to understand how important these kind of topics are and, allow them the space that they deserve. So as far as activists are concerned, there are so many. If I name one, then I would be, I will be unfair to the others because I don't have just one role model. I'm very lucky to have many, many role models in this field. And they have been doing a very difficult job, So salute to all of them.
I think that brings me very closely to the next question, which is, can partnerships and associations between different organizations, corporates, the government, can that be the key to change? Do you think partnerships can be critical for a climate change related awareness?
I think that is the only thing that can work. So you cannot now be be like having your own turf. Okay, this is my research, my field, my forte, that's it. No, it can't be just me and my tribe. Everything is linked. And also I want to sort of, especially because of the fact that you've mentioned the partnership element, everything now has to be seen under the umbrella of the SDGs. We have signed on to it. And even climate change is one element of those SDGs. Climate action is goal 13.
Yeah.
But it feeds into the other actions because you've got life on land, life underwater. But the first SDG is ending poverty. And the second one is ending hunger. You cannot end poverty without ending hunger. And ending hunger means that, your agricultural policies, your water rationalization, the quality of air, everything is linked. every single thing. And if you go towards the end of those SDGs, it shows about the networking. Everybody has to network, because cheesy as it may sound, it is just one home that all of us share, this earth. And we cannot just mark out a territory where we will be living in a bubble, where everything, the air is clean and the water is clean and everything. It is coming from somewhere, it is going somewhere, the water. So so you can't really have that one place that is the ideal place. We need to work together. So the corporates have a very big role in it, because they have had a big role in degradation of the environment, sorry to say. So I refuse. I know it's a difficult line to sort of walk, because many people also think of it in a manner of sort of greenwashing if you're going and interacting with corporates, etc. But if they are profiting from our resources, then from that profit, they not only have to, have to remove the degradation that has led to them profiting from our resources, they also have to fix things. So you have to interact. See, if you treat them as a problem and keep them away, then they will remain a problem. So you have to engage with them and make them realize this is a problem, because there is a fix. Now the corporates, the manufacturers are talking of going on to net zero. That means there is a fix. They have realized that there is another way of doing business. There is another way of manufacturing, which will not be as damaging. Similarly, for water use, we've got the tiniest country of Israel, which is bang in the middle of the desert, having the best water policies and best water usage as a model. So we have the 6th largest river basin, and yet, we are saying that water resources are not enough for us. So maybe we are not using them optimally. And not just, I'm not talking of Pakistan only. If you go across countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, so many of our problems are, shared problems. The air quality issue is a shared transboundary issue. The water issue is a transboundary issue between several South Asian countries. It's not just an India-Pakistan issue. There's an India-Bangladesh issue. There's an India-Nepal issue. There's a Myanmar issue. There's a Mekong Delta, China issue. So, all problems are shared. So ultimately, it'll have to be a shared solution finding, and global forums, collaboratives, collectives, of activists, of organizations, of NGOs, of governments, of government departments. I think that is the only way to move ahead.
With that note, I think I will thank you, and anyone who's watching our session, I'll thank them as well. And I think this has been such a great way to kick off the day. Thank you, Ms. Afia, so much. And we are going to reach out to you when we also start going into research of these topics that you mentioned. My interest spiked the moment that you spoke about these specific industries and how they're being impacted, especially the women and girls. I'd really like to dig deep into this research and learn from you. So
I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you. And we have another session coming up, and I'll quickly just summarize, some of the actions that we're taking before I end this session. We're introducing our line of menstrual products that are made by rural women. That's one of the actions that we're doing. We have educated women in rural areas about these topics in Urdu and Sindhi. And today they're going to be taking 5 different actions. One of the action is that they're going to be planting trees. They're going to be doing a community cleanup. They're going to be recycling old clothes and making new things out of it. So there are different things that they've picked out, and I'll be sharing some pictures from their initiatives.
Please do, and I'll promote them. And this is something that really brings joy to my heart. We keep talking about the problems, but we need to showcase such actions so people can be motivated and they can do their own action. Thank you so much for having me.